cooperation of learner and teacher throughout the length of the learning process with the use of technical media such as print, audio, video or computer technology, which unite both the learner and teacher and provide two-way communications that can initiate a dialogue is my understanding about distance education. When we upload our lectures written on PowerPoint presentation or on PDF, then give our students the link on YouTube, is it already considered as distance learning? Is it enough? Is it effective? Hi, this is RJ and welcome back. Today we are going to discuss about distance learning. Nowadays, the emergence of computer network technology vastly changed the society, which includes the economic situations, business industries, healthcare services, and even the education system. Today's learning techniques are very much compared to the different techniques many years ago. Students visit Google instead of going to the library. They carry their smartphones or tablet computer instead of their books. They want to gather all the information they need in a very quick and in a very fast manner. They tend to put all the pieces of information from different sources, either from the electronic or non-electronic resources. They want instant access. They want to shop online, do virtual games, use social media such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and a lot more of other apps to communicate and get updates from friends. Most often, they prefer looking at pictures, enjoying animations, or watching videos instead of reading books and listening to lectures. The world's academic approach has radically changed, and it is becoming very hard for the academe to compete with technology. The teacher's teaching skills used in time before are no longer sufficient and sustainable compared to what is in contrast to the technology today. All of us must acquire new and modern learning skills. According to Professor Jim Taylor, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University of Southern Queensland, on his article entitled Fifth Generation Distance Education, he mentioned that the next few years will encompass the significant impact of broadband, wireless, smart cars, smart fridges, streaming media, voice recognition, and the inevitable growth of new internet applications. In the present context, change is the only constant. With that statement and thinking, the challenge is on us now, as we ask ourselves on how we respond to such dynamic new environment. Different institutions of learning, both the higher and basic educational institutions of public and private schools, must respond on how we synchronously deliver learning materials to our learners using computer network technology. Distance learning offers myriad of solutions and strategies to help us combat increasing barriers of traditional teaching to computer-based instructions. According to Anderson, the technology sets the beats and creates the music, while the pedagogy defines the moves. The academic institutions, particularly the teachers, must be innovative and savvy about computer technology, including the use of technological devices, internet infrastructures, different computer-aided instructions, and several computer applications. When it comes to technology, teachers must be able to creatively apply numerous possibilities of agenda, approach, and learning styles, especially in an online class environment. Learning activities including online discussions, blogs, forums, threaded discussion boards, chat, video conferencing, and other different kinds of online assessments, including the creation of electronic learning modules which may adapt the integration of several materials online such as YouTube, OER, or the open educational resources, and many more. Distance education started many years ago with confusion on its terminology. Desmond Keegan, being one of the leading authorities in distance education, made a definite and clear definition and criteria on what distance education is all about. To name few, there must be the use of technical media, and it is considered as an essential element of distance education, and also separation of teacher and students and provision of two-way communication. The development of distance education describes the upheaval in many schools and universities to create or implement learning platforms that will give access to so many educational materials, collaboration of students and teachers to institution via online system. Although many institutions are still in the process of adopting and developing which concepts related to distance education might be applied. In implementing any concepts related to distance education or DE program, the institution must consider all their available resources like computer technology including hardware and software, internet access, and the integration of their curriculum with any learning management system platforms or LMS, and complexities on the traditional teachers who find themselves as novices or beginners when first teaching online, and in some cases it could result to a resistance. Students, on the other hand, use several PC technologies, specifically the smartphones, tablets, or laptop computers that are ubiquitous in the campus or even at the convenience of their homes. It is an opportunity on the part of the instructional designers or the teachers to use this technology to deliver educational materials online. The teachers must have specialized skills in creating instructional designs and media productions. Most educational institutions are just starting to choose which type of distance model is appropriate for them. The question of resources, support, and maintaining the online system has always been a consideration. Speaking of distance model, allow me to share what I've learned at the University of the Philippines, being a student in distance education, and to share some of my researches, observations, and experiences as an educator. Looking at how the expert defined distance education from Holmberg, the French Law, Moore, Peters, and Keegan, what is common with their discussion about distance education? There is what we call the separation of teacher and learner. They also speak about teaching and learning behavior. They also mention about use of technical media and two-way communication dialogue. Distance learning is described as the opposite of face-to-face education. Once there was a separation of teacher and learner, in education process, then we classify it as a distance learning. It can be full distance or even a partial distance. Full distance is 100% distance learning. You don't see your teachers and the teachers doesn't see his or her students as well. They just simply communicate via computer technology platforms or by using a learning management system. Teachers give instruction online and learners submit and communicate online. Many institutions immediately shifted to 100% fully online distance learning during the coronavirus pandemic. As a result, clamors from students on the difficult and confusing situation and environment that leaves no choice but to embrace the new system. Educators on the other side of the story also find it difficult to manage distance learning when we have to consider the necessary skills to design electronic instructional materials, understand the internet infrastructure, and manage one of the most important elements of distance learning, and that is the learner's support system. It cannot be denied that the impetus for the creation of electronic learning materials can stem from coronavirus that led to confusion for both learners and teachers. And it is not really easy for the teachers to shift immediately from face-to-face environment to distance learning. Teachers have exerted too much effort just to deliver the learning materials to all learners. Everything happened unexpectedly and it was really so fast. On the other hand, the good side is, I know we learned something from it. Going to the partial distance is a mixture of educational process like it can be 50% online and 50% face-to-face. The Open University of the United Kingdom, for example, is approximately 80% print-based, 10% broadcasting, and 10% face-to-face. This type of system can also be called didactic model. To understand more on the different terminologies related to distance education, allow me to share to you the many concepts that are related to distance education by Maria Cristina Padolina on her articles on what is distance education and the development of distance education and related concepts, a UP Open University. The articles from Maria Cristina Padolina was also my first reading material when I first enrolled at the University of the Philippines. She explained very well the different concepts related to distance education. This may be considered as an old form of distance education when the communication between the education provider and the learner was through the postal system. The student received learning materials through postal mail and sent back assignment and other course requirement through the same system. The term was most likely coined to refer to forms of study where a major portion of the learning process takes place at the house of the student. The current use of the term refers to systems where the students are children and the learning process is assisted by a parent or a personal tutor. This usually refers to education or training conducted by an educational institution at a place outside of its campus. Some refer this as extension classes. The learning process in a distance education program takes place with the students working largely on their own, guided only by instructions contained in a study guide. Distance education may be considered as a way of delivering education. Open learning, on the other hand, is considered by some as a view or perspective about learning where the student is given wide latitude in what, how, and when to learn. The student is given a large degree of control of the learning process. The openness refers to entry criteria, time including pace of learning, the place where it takes place, the learning materials used, and the learning process itself. There are some who use flexible learning interchangeably with open learning. One may consider flexible learning to be more limited, where the choices available to students are wider than usual but not totally open. For example, a student may be allowed to choose when to be tested. The word distributed in this term comes from distributed resources, which refers to learning resources that are not located in a centralized place, such as in the case of traditional learning in a university where the experts, books, and other information resources, including peers, are all located in a campus. Distributed learning may take place in a traditional class where the teacher provides opportunities for students to learn from individuals and others not found on campus. In an online learning, learning resources are accessed by the student through the internet. Communication between the educational institution, teacher, and the student is also through the internet. The prefix E originally stood for electronic, but eventually this was applied to anything that made use of computers, and more recently to one that involves the use of computer networks such as the local area network or the LAN, a wide area network, WAN, or the internet. The prefix M refers to mobile, so M learning refers to the use of mobile or portable technology, such as mobile phones or handheld computers in the learning process. Like open learning, mobile learning is considered by some as the learning that addresses the mobility of individual in our present world. A combination of multiple approaches to learning constitutes blended learning. Learning in a classroom situation may be blended with learning from internet resources. Numerous combinations are possible. Once there is a separation of learner and teacher throughout the length of the learning process with the use of technical media such as print, audio, video, or computer technology, which unite both the learner and teacher and provide two-way communications that can initiate a dialogue, is my understanding about distance education. Most of the educational institutions, both public and private, are now slowly shifting to distance learning. Due to the emergence of computer technology, internet infrastructure, and the inevitable growth of internet applications lead us to modify our work system. Several benefits on the part of the learners were also made available, such as being able to work where and when they choose. They can repeat instructional materials several times until such time they learned and digested everything in it. And it is very effective to all types of learners, both slow and fast. This as well allows them to save money and time spent in traveling. It makes education becomes accessible anywhere they are, and in fact, they can even get a degree in any parts of the world. Furthermore, it saves them from any dangers and hassles on the road. It offers a convenient way of learning, and they can work and study during their free time, and so much more other benefits. After we identify which among the concepts of distance learning and its impact to education, we then need to find out if it's going to fit to our learning needs. And after knowing and understanding the importance of distance learning, it is also imperative that we distinguish the very basic of designing and organizing our materials contents, as well as knowing the theories and studies that was made by the expert for us to successfully deliver the learning materials to our learners. In distance learning or distance education, it is not about giving burden to our students for the sake of saying, I'm doing online activities. It's not about giving them tons of electronic or digital materials that sometimes we do not just even understand or even read also the whole content. It is not about the uploading of our PowerPoint lecture presentations, whereby distance learning is very much different with what we usually do during face-to-face discussions. Remember, in face-to-face lectures, we deliver the content with explanation. It is not about giving so many links on YouTube for them to watch, and it is not dealt with competition of performance tasks and several forms of assessment with our colleagues. As a result, students become overloaded with activities and assessment which may give them so many sleepless nights, working overtime even on weekends, giving them less time for themselves, for their friends, and most importantly, to their family. Lack of time to relax and recharge just to beat the deadlines of our activities and assessment. We might give them negative impressions and experiences on distance learning. I believe that we have to respect the time of our students, giving them time to do other things like time with their families and friends, time to relax and enjoy, go shopping, do fitness routines and the like. I believe that if we plan well, we can make their learning balanced and enjoyable at the same time. The theoretical model developed by Garrison, Anderson, and Archer is very effective in an online educational community, and the work has been referred by hundreds of scholars and is arguably the most popular model used for both the research and practice of online learning. The community of inquiry model by Garrison, Anderson, and Archers involves three critical components: the cognitive presence, the social presence, and the teaching presence. The teaching in an online environment, in its most compelling feature, is the shifting of time and place of the educational interactions. In the concept of educational interactions, and all of its activities must be properly orchestrated for us to create an environment of balance and a communication-rich learning content. Terry Anderson, in his article, Teaching in an Online Learning Context, mentioned that there is deep and meaningful learning result when there are sufficient levels of three component presences. To attain optimal educational experience, every core element must interact with one another and produce acceptable results in an online learning environment. Let me explain to you the community of inquiry model. Let's start with the teaching presence. Teaching presence is the binding element in creating a community of learners which consists of three general functions according to Anderson. 1. Teacher performs in the process of creating an effective teaching presence. It is where the teacher organizes and designs the learning experiences that takes place. Second is that teaching involves devising and implementing activities to encourage discourse between and among students, between the teacher and the students, and between individual students, group of students, and content resources. And last one is, the teaching role goes beyond moderating the learning experiences. Teachers are also called instructional designers, and our role in distance learning is very critical as we facilitate the learning experiences of our learners in a form of designing learning materials, implement rules and provide guidelines on how the learners will interact to create optimal learning experiences, and to balance interactions among the other conceptual model of online learning. In the cognitive presence, learning can take place in an environment that supports the development and growth of critical thinking skills. It is the ability of the learners to interact with the text-based communication, understanding and recognizing problems, analyzing and creating solutions. And lastly, according to Anderson, social presence relates to establishing a supportive environment such that the students feel the necessary degree and comfort and safety to express their ideas in a collaborative context and to present themselves as real and functional human beings. The absence of social presence leads to students' inability to express disagreements, share viewpoints, explore differences, and accept support and confirmation from peers and teachers. Social presence is something about recognizing the existence of the learners, the feeling of comfort and safety to express their ideas and defend their own intellectual position. During my early months taking distance education at the University of the Philippines, since it is fully online, what I first did was to find someone who can be my distant friend. With that, the feeling of not being alone gives additional impact and extra motivation to continue the course. Paying attention to instructional pedagogy is also knowing and scrutinizing the architecture of the learning and teaching environment. Careful integration on the instructional media requires several considerations and approaches in both synchronous and asynchronous modalities, and considering the human and machine interaction, known also as the computer-mediated communication or CMC, as described by Garrison, Anderson, and Archer as a versatile medium of delivery of educational program anytime, anywhere, into a variety of formats. Reconsidering instructional content for distance learning. The first step in organizing the content of our online learning materials is by selecting the appropriate learning management system that can manage the entire learning platform from a secured and centralized environment. Learning management system is a software program that allows the institution and particularly the teachers to deliver educational courses, training programs, or learning development programs for the learners. Most LMS allow the instructor to organize the contents and to control the flow of the course. One important feature of LMS is the module, where we can organize courses by weeks. It can also contain files, discussions, assignments, examination, and other learning materials for our learners. Comparatively, what we can do in the classroom, we can almost do it online. When we create modules, we have to consider the following. First, we have to identify it per week, and we have to include the starting date up to the end date. This will inform our learners that they have to manage all the activities within the specified period of time. Next is the subject title or the topic for the week. Aside from the subject title, we have to tell our learners our objectives, or it can also be a little introduction about the topic. And lastly, our learning activities, such as our discussions, reading materials, demonstration videos, assessment, and other learning materials. The week number, including the dates, and the topic must be same with the course guide that you created. You also have to inform your students ahead of time if your mode of communication will be synchronous or asynchronous. The great way to start the academic year is to welcome our students. Greet them in the first day of your class, even when we are in a distance learning environment. It is very important that our students will immediately feel our presence. So, I suggest that teachers must prepare a short video material that will welcome our students. We introduce ourselves, tell them about the subject, and most of all, we must inspire them despite of distance learning. Let them know that we can maintain the quality of education that they expect. We also have to give them the assurance that we will do our best to assist and support them throughout the academic year. Messages sent to the students must be more on inspiring and motivating them to pursue. This is similar to face-to-face interaction during our first day in the class, where we welcome them, we introduce ourselves, and give them a brief summary of our subject. This is an example of teaching presence in the community of inquiry model in our previous discussion, and interactions of teacher to students in Anderson's equivalency theorem, and also a synchronous mode of communication or interaction. I also encourage the administrators to greet the community of learners. This is in accordance to our students' video message. We give students a set of questions for them to answer. We can start our statement by saying, then we can ask for the students' expectations, reasons for enrolling in the institution, their hobbies. They may also share something about their family and many other questions just to set the tone right. We can also create another set of questionnaires that they can post on the group page about them and instruct them to read and respond to some of their classmates' posts. In this activity, there is social presence and teaching presence in Anderson's community of inquiry model. And we also allow interactions between the teachers to the students and student to student in equivalency theorem. And I suggest this as an asynchronous mode of communication. The course guide is a helpful tool for faculty members to begin helping students to appreciate and inform the nature of a given course. It benefits our students as they will be guided accordingly on the phasing of our discussion and submissions of requirements in an online environment. Here are some of my suggestions for the creation of the course guide. On the course guide, we specify our course objectives, course outline, study schedule indicating the weeks and the corresponding activities, course requirements, specific guidelines or general guidelines on assignments, and the tasks that they need to comply. It is imperative that they understand how they will submit the assignments and tasks. We also need to include the schedule of assessments or examinations, grading system, your own house rules, and how the students can communicate with you, especially when you are offline. We also have to remind our students to always check their LMS for any updates and announcement. The course guide must be in portable document format or PDF so that the student can read it anytime and for several times as they wish. In this case, we become transparent to our students on how we are going to deliver the content and how they will be graded accordingly. Furthermore, this will also allow our students to understand our subject and our specific guidelines. Threaded Discussion Forum is an electronic discussion board that gives the teacher to post topics for discussion, which provides the students the ability to respond and interact by posting or exchanging messages. Discussion forum, also referred to as web forum, discussion boards, or message boards. This learning model is also an example of asynchronous communication. In the threaded discussion forum, I usually limit my students to about 250 or 300 words per answer. For them be concise, thus make them avoid being verbose on their discussion, and I usually require my students to read and respond to other posts. Here's my example. In Anderson's community of inquiry model, it exemplifies three presences: the social, the cognitive, and the teacher, which further elaborates the equivalency theorem of student to student, student to content, and student to teacher interactions. The teachers must coherently respond to the discussion forum to signify as the indicator of our presence. The threaded discussion is one of my favorite as it allows interactions in all components of distance learning. This is similar to recitation in the face-to-face setting. The submission bin allows the students to submit their assignments electronically, which can be in different formats such as PDF, Word document, JPEG, or any other format desirable. Many LMS is supported with this kind of submission, but it's better if we can have the standard format for our institution, specifically on the terms or jargons used to avoid confusion. For the submission of assignment, I usually have the guidelines and submitting assignment. I always include the due date, the assignment questions or the task, and the title of their assignments. This includes the use of any institutional font style or font size, as well as the use of proper in-text referencing and the list of references, and including the required file name format, in which I usually start with the class course or class section, followed by the last name, first name, and the assignment number. The body or group system, as I called it, is a network support where I pair or team students to do their responsibilities and communicate their task or project at the convenience of their time. The sense of being responsible students to accomplish their task is also one of the objectives of this body system. They can choose their body or group, or I can assign their body or group for a study session or a short-term project. I usually instruct them to record the time and day of their meetings, the platform of communication that they want to use, their agendas and accomplishments, which they have to submit as part of their requirements. In distance learning, this is the way to have our students express themselves, share their viewpoints, accept support and confirmation from their peers who are distant to them. Usually, body or group system is a form of synchronous communication where the students communicate in real time. Online discussion is the most interactive part of distance learning. It is where the teacher delivers its content on a real-time or synchronous mode of communication to the learners. The learners can also directly interact with the teachers and to the other learners. And lastly, the learners can express and share their opinion. Using real-time online discussion requires several considerations. First, there must be an agreed time for both learners and the teachers. I usually use my classes schedule for my student as the time reference and as an alternative schedule to my face-to-face discussion when I have out-of-town seminars or conferences. I highly use real-time discussion when classes are suspended due to COVID-19. Aside from what I have mentioned, I also use it for small group reporting, online defense, and online advising. The second consideration is the platform for web conferencing, which allows communication between the teachers and the learners. For web conferencing tool, we must consider some of its features like video and audio support, screen sharing, hardware and software compatibility, group and private chat, assigned small group session, and many other features depending on the need. There are so many web conferencing tools that are available. Actually, many are free, but with limited accessibility such as limit on time, allowable number of participants, and limited web conferencing tool features. And lastly, the teacher must create guidelines or reminders on the use of real-time online discussion, such as the mute feature needs to be utilized when the students enter or leave the room. Another is to always keep the camera open to guarantee the presence of the participants. And lastly, to turn on the audio only when needed. It may be challenging for teachers to design, create, and mix several forms of learning media together with the features such as the audio, video, animation, music, or even the use of interactive platforms. Nonetheless, these factors are well managed, especially when we are in front of our students. Of course, there should be no doubt that we can definitely do all of these things simultaneously. Teachers are distinctively talented and very creative at the same time. This new learning environment and model may become challenging since it covers a different story, especially now when we have to perform our teaching duties in an online learning environment. As much as possible, do not send your students with just your PowerPoint presentations. They might need further explanation about its contents. What we must always do with our PowerPoint presentation is that it must always be accompanied with proper discussion and facilitation. Remember, face-to-face learning is very much different compared to distance learning. Learning media becomes effective if our students can feel our presence, like integrating our recorded voices over the PowerPoint presentation. We can also show ourselves over a recorded video demonstrating and facilitating our lesson. This can always be a combination of animation, lessons with background music, and other computer effects which can be more effective and engaging to our learners. These are all my suggestions. Nonetheless, the teacher handling the class is always the best person to know the capacity, the interests, as well as the challenges of the learners. Moreover, the teacher is always the right person to appropriately create, design, and provide the most effective learning materials. And in addition, we must always put into consideration the different kinds of approach for your learners. Again, as always, be reminded that face-to-face learning is far much different to distance learning environment. Students nowadays have several means and reasons to be dishonest when taking online assessments. Cheating can happen easier in an online learning environment, and it is more difficult to monitor compared to face-to-face testing facilitation. In fact, it was also one of the topics discussed during the National Conference on Open and Distance E-Learning, or NCODEL 2017, held in Manila, as they called it the dark side of the open and distance learning. And here are some cheating activities of the students during examination. Number 1, student can just Google or search online. Number 2, they can simply look into some books and other learning materials. Third, they can hire somebody to do their online academic responsibility. And lastly, they can collaborate with peers through several computer communications applications. Therefore, each online test would have an open book concept, except on locations that may be able to provide proctors. Now, how do we minimize online cheaters if we can eliminate cheating? Here are some tips that might consider. Reduce the amount of time students have to take the test. If your LMS is supported with timer per item and displays one question at a time, better use it. Randomize test questions from a large test bank. This will refrain students from collaborating from their peers. Let's say you create 100 questions stored in test bank, and for each exam, you can set the LMS to generate 30 questions chosen at random. So every learner will get different set of 30 questions. Most learning management systems provide both shuffling and randomization's capability. If possible, have the examination in synchronous mode to avoid sharing of questions and answers. If all students will take exam on the same day and time, everybody will be busy. With that, it will lessen their chances to communicate with their peers, especially if the exam has timer. Run software plagiarism detection for essay and discussion items. Be creative and use variety of assessment strategies, such as problem solving, true or false, essay, and so on. Disable or limit the number of attempts. Consider allowing students with multiple attempts will use these opportunities to practice and cheat. Otherwise, lessen his/her chances to cheat. Disable print option for asynchronous mode. There are so many strategies that we can adopt to make our activities successful. We just need to be creative. The secret of online learning is creativity and availability. Better make ourselves available during consultation hours to maintain the student-teacher interaction and motivation. This will definitely be a great factor for the student to keep on learning through idealizing our real-time support. Teachers must always display warm understanding of the needs of each student. Religiously encourage student to student, student to content, and teacher to student interactions by continuously involving them with the online activities. Building or creating distance learning materials can be compared to two people who would like to build a bridge in order to cross the river. One will dump different kinds of materials on the river until such time people can walk on top of it. The other one will find and select the appropriate materials, construct it effectively, which includes careful planning until such time when people can cross the river. The two people who built the bridge have fulfilled what they want to achieve that allowed the people to cross on top of it conveniently. There might be some questions with its stability. There might be some confusion about which bridge will last longer and which is much safer. If I will allow my student to cross on the first bridge or on the second bridge, then what might happen to them? Am I putting my students in danger and confusion? Am I achieving my learning goals and objectives for them effectively? Now, I will leave the answer to you. How will you construct your own bridge so that your student can cross on top of it? Thank you for listening. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and be notified on my next educational video. Keep safe, everybody. Live Jesus in our hearts forever.